I am so excited to be here today. I am Julie Erickson. I'm a learning specialist at TIE, and welcome to the continuation of Elevate Rapid City's virtual trainings. We are really glad you're joining us today. A series of trainings are being offered that cover everything from health insurance, mental health, marketing, to business resources. If you've missed a training, you can find previous webinars on the Elevate Rapid City YouTube channel, and you can also view upcoming webinars on the Elevate Rapid City Facebook page. So as I said before, I'm Julie Erickson. I'm a learning specialist at TIE, Technology and Innovation in Education. And today what we're going to do is we are going to spend some time looking at Zoom, which seems like that's where we're all living right now, and how to set it up so that it works best for you, provides the most safety for your participants, and how you can make it the most interactive you can. Feel free to drop questions in the Q&A, and I will try to answer them as much as I can, and I will just get started. So all of the resources for today are located at tie.link/elevate Zoom. And I have shared that in the chat, and I will drop it in again. One of the things that you guys probably know from all the Zooming that we've been doing is that once you have the chat does not pre-populate. So if you've already shared something in the chat, and somebody joins later, they don't see it. And so if you want to share links or resources to people, like here's the agenda, here's the resources, you do need to share it often, especially at the beginning of the meeting. So let's get rolling on all the fun things. So here's the resources again, and let's go. So I'm currently sharing my screen, and we're going to talk about that too in a second. But I want to change sharing, and I'm going to switch over to another screen. So where we're going to start today is here at Zoom. Zoom 101. And the thing we really need here are the settings. A lot of us just kind of log into Zoom, get started, and the settings, we just don't think about the settings. And that's one of the things that I really noticed as we started using Zoom more. The settings really matter. And so this is one of the things we're going to jump into right away, is we're going to look at those boring settings and kind of like, are these really important? Yeah, they are. So let's do a real quick jump into the settings, and I will show you what that looks like. So when you're logged into your settings on your computer on zoom.us, these are the things that you're going to see. And so you have at the beginning, you pop up to your profile and all that stuff. But over on the far left, you can see your settings here. So let's take a quick look at those just to help with the thinking about all the things that Zoom has been doing lately, and what we can do to help have a really successful video. First of all, when you're scheduling a meeting, you'll want to make sure that your host video is off, and also your participants video is off. And those are things, it's just kindness. Maybe you did just roll out of bed, or your backdrop isn't all that great, and you want to make sure you can set that up. And so it's not like you have a video pop on. So I generally set those off. One of the biggies that has impacted, I think a lot of people had the setting to join before host was enabled or on, and that allows anybody to log into your meeting before you're there. And so disabling the join before host gives you a little bit more control in terms of who's going to pop into your meetings and when you're not there. Personal meeting ID. There's a lot of confusion about personal meeting IDs. I like to think about the personal meeting ID like my cell phone. That is the meeting room that it's always the same login, it's always the same URL. And so I'm not going to share that out with you guys today for a meeting because it's my personal information. But if it's my best friend or if it's a colleague I work with closely all the time, I probably would share out a personal meeting ID and do a quick PMI. And so just when you're scheduling, and so when you're like, well, what does this mean? Should I use this or not? Turning it off for when scheduling a meeting, I generally do not use my personal meeting ID. You can, when you do an instant meeting, you can turn on to use your personal meeting ID, and then that will be the same if you're gonna, just pop in. So it just depends on what you wanna do. Scrolling on through, authenticated users, this would be one of those things that your users would need to be authenticated. And so for most of us, we would want that off because unless you're working with a set group of people in an organization, this really is not useful when we're trying to reach lots of people. We require a password when scheduling new meetings. I'm showing you my paid account, and so I can turn that on and off. If you have a free account or a K-12 account, you can no longer turn that off. And it is locked by the Zoom admin. And so you have to have a password when scheduling new meetings from the beginning of April on. Require a password for instant meetings. There again, it's required if you have that free account. But so the password stuff, if you have a paid account, you have control. If you have a free or a K-12, you don't. Mute participants on entry. This really is a good setting to have if you have a large group of people. We just facilitated a large conference with 1,800 people in an opening session. We muted participants on entry just because we didn't need to have that disruption. But you do, like if it's a small group, I generally don't because I do want to say hi to everybody and not have to worry about people trying to unmute themselves. So keeping on, now we have the in-meeting basic stuff, and this is where it starts to get fun. And you really need to have these enabled to be able to participate fully in the meeting as a participant. And so we're in a webinar today, so you don't have the same functionality as you would if we were in a Zoom room meeting. But as we scroll on through chat, you want to have this session enabled if you want to allow your participants to chat with you back and forth. The private chat, that allows your participants to have private conversations. And so that's totally up to you. Auto saving, play sound when participants join or leave. You know what? That really depends. I don't use it, but you can, and especially if you use waiting rooms, it can be a great way to notify you if somebody else joins. I would change it to heard by host only, simply because otherwise the dinging will happen and people who pop in, everybody will hear the dinging and it gets a little annoying. So I'm going to disable it again. Keeping on, the other really cool things, co-host and polling are not available in free. So keeping on, screen sharing. This is one of those things that you think originally, oh yes, I want to make it as easy as possible for anybody to share their screen in a meeting with me. And then Zoom bombing started. And so yes, I want to be able to share my screen as the host. And so you can turn on and off who can share. And so if I say who can share host only, that means I can, as the host, I'm the only one who can share my screen, but I can grant permission to participants while in the meeting. And so you have some options. So definitely as you're thinking about that option, you want to think about that. So we had a great question about the co-host feature. And so if you're using a paid account, what the co-host does is when you're in the meeting, you can move people up to be a co-host with you. And so they're going to have the same in-meeting controls as you do, the host. And so as we get through and kind of look at all the fun things you can do to control people, you'll be able to see. And so this is really great if you have multiple people presenting, if you have a a large group, it's really nice to be able to add that co-host. You cannot do that. It is not an option to turn on in a free account though. So just so you know. Keeping on scrolling, the annotation, this allows your participants to provide annotations on the screen. You can turn it, when you're sharing your screen, you can turn this feature on and off. And so I don't mind leaving it on. If somebody were to start writing on the screen, I would turn it off. The whiteboard is another feature. And so just like a whiteboard in your classroom or in a meeting room, you have a whiteboard option here. And then I think my favorite, and I'm sad we're in a webinar today because it's way more fun to do nonverbal feedback, and I'll show you that because this allows you to ask people those yes/no questions, the who's done this before, and get some really quick feedback, and also kind of engage your participants a little bit in a non-threatening way. And then you can also say, oh hey, I see there's 3 of you that have done this before. Does anybody want to unmute and share with me what you've done? And so you have that opportunity to develop some conversation, and it's not just that quiet room and you're the talking head. Remove participants to rejoin. When you are the host, you have the power to remove somebody. I won't demo on any of you today. And so we can rejoin, you can disable them from rejoining. Allowing participants to rename themselves, totally. You do want to be able to allow that unless they abuse it, and then you can turn it off. Profile pictures, another option. Keeping on, down in the meeting advanced, the main meeting advanced one you want to look at is the breakout rooms, because breakout rooms really, especially if you've got a larger group, and by larger group I'm talking, you know, even 10, it's hard to have a conversation in a Zoom room and actually have, you know, actually discuss something. And so breakout rooms enable you to ship people out and have small group discussions, and really can impact your meetings and your work. So that's the settings, kind of 1, 2, 3 quick on the settings. And so let's go back and check out. So we went through all of the settings. Your next thing we're going to look at are what helps you with looking good on a Zoom webinar. So my boss put together Dr. Julie Mathieson put together an amazing resource on you know, just kind of some things to think about. And so I'm horrible at it, just so you know. And I don't do a great job of keeping my doing my camera and video very well. But, you know, just some things to think about and practice potentially. I often log in to another device and do webinars with myself to see what I look like and see how things work. So as we scroll on down, you're going to see some of the things that we want to think about. Lighting. Lighting is a really big thing. So I'm currently in a basement, but we have some fancy lights to make sure that I look sort of okay. Looking at your camera and not looking away or looking at another screen, for me that's really hard. I tend to want to look at lots of different things and not at the camera. Sound. Really good practice to keep yourself on mute unless you're talking. Just because when we're doing that, it reduces the ambient noise, and even, you know, so even if you have a pretty quiet environment, you never know when, you know, somebody's going to walk through, or your cell phone might ring, or anything like that. A headphone is really great too, because it helps you, it helps with your, you don't sound so echoey. So if you're doing a lot, it is nice to have a headphone. And then she also provides some really great, you know, kind of visuals for what you should look at, and kind of what your setup could be. And so if you're, you know, questioning how to manage that, there's some really good resources there. One of the fun things that's happened since we've really jumped into Zoom is you have the option for virtual backgrounds. And so as you can see, I'm not really in a library right now. I am in my basement with a green screen behind me, but it sure looks cool. And so if you go to the resources for today, that I shared with you. So you'll see that you have all of the settings here. And in the advanced, your virtual background is one that you do want to turn on. Um, there are so many fun backgrounds that you can turn on and use with Zoom. And so you can download all of these great backgrounds and turn them on. And if you want to do that, you're going to need to click on your video and then go to choose virtual settings. But do remember, your setting for virtual background does need to be turned on your settings. So that can be something that you may need to double check. But the virtual background is super fun, and there's lots of really cool ways to use it. Some of the other things to kind of think about as you are rolling in is the mood. So like I threw up just a quick slide this right before the meeting with the resources and kind of what we were doing. But you could have scrolling slides, and so that as people join early, they see something and there's something there. You also can play music if you want to. So if you wanted to play some quiet music or something, just so that people hear the sound. So when they join, they don't think, oh, is my sound working? Because you'll see that when, I'm sure you've seen it when you've been in webinars and you're like, I can't hear anything. Is the sound working? Oh, sure. So my virtual green screen is, and I will actually add the link to my virtual green screen, what it is in the Wakelet. And I'll turn my virtual green screen off so you can see what I look like without it. I mean, I look the same, but my backdrop doesn't. So we'll go into my Zoom. And so I'm going to turn off my green screen, and that's what I look like. And so, but I will add the actual green screen that I have in the Wakelet afterwards so that you guys can go back and look at it. I need to go back to my library. Apparently I'm feeling, but you can have all sorts of fun green screens. And it, depending on the device that you're on, you may, like my iPad, I do not need to have a green screen. And so your computer may have enough settings or resources that you can use it without a green screen too. Okay, so that's the mood. And I think the last thing was a plan. It really is important to have a plan for what you're going to be doing in a Zoom meeting, because there needs to be that you need to be able to prepare documents or figure out if you're going to do breakouts, and kind of think about how you're going to facilitate that discussion beforehand. When I do a major event, I'll have an actual facilitation guide. Other times I will just have a schedule with links to the resources that I want people to be able to go to so that they can follow along. But that plan ahead will really impact how your meeting goes. So let's look at some fun ways we can be interactive. And so Stephanie says the breakout groups is participant. You can mix up the groups and get small group participation in really cool ways. Yes. And that is one of the things I love is you can really do some amazing stuff with breakout rooms. So here we are. Let's jump in. We're going to start with participant feedback. And so I'm going to share over here. So participant feedback. So you guys right now are with me in the participants tab. But one of the things that you can do in the participants tab is you can't do that in this session because we're in a webinar, but when you are broken out into your own Zoom rooms and you've turned on that participant feedback option, you see the manage participants option. And so that's what you see. But your participants just see participants. And so I generally say, look for the little person, and then you'll see all your names, and then at the very bottom of that screen, you're going to see the option for yes, no, go slower, go faster. And so the really cool thing here is you can ask those yes, no questions. You can really start to get some, like, who's done this, or is it time for a break, or I mean, you can ask questions and get some quick response. Way more effective than having people raise their hands in a face-to-face session. The other really cool thing, when you are the host, you have the power. How many of you guys see the mute all button? Exactly. You can mute the whole room. And so that is like the best. So people, you can mute the whole room. And so I was working with a group of band and music teachers on Zoom, and we were talking, and they had some background noise, and I muted them all, and I told them, and I'm like, guys, you can mute everybody. Just think about that, because band, music, kids are always really noisy, and you can just mute them. So you can mute everybody. So you have that power. You can also unmute everybody. And then the other thing is you have 3 dots at the bottom of that window with some additional functionality. And so you'll notice here that we can mute participants on entry. We can uncheck the ability that allows participants to unmute themselves. You can check or uncheck renaming, the exit enter time. You can enable the waiting room, and you can also lock the meeting. And so this is great if you are having a small group and everybody arrived. You can lock the meeting and nobody else can join. That's one of the features that they've really emphasized with the Zoom bombing. We typically have meetings that are a little more open-ended, and so I don't tend to lock meetings, but I can see if I was doing a small meeting that I wanted to keep private and there was just a handful of us and we were there, you could definitely lock the meeting. So the next thing that we can do is so Zoom bombing, yes. Locking the meeting can help with Zoom bombing. Truly, the things that will really help with Zoom bombing are going to be those things like making sure that the participants can't join before you, not allowing participants to share their screens, not allowing, knowing how to use the functions of the meeting. For example, you can mute everybody. And so you know that there's that mute all button. And so if somebody is making noise and you just mute them all. You also can mouse over a participant name and the participant's name here. And this is where you would get that option to remove. And so you could remove somebody from a meeting. And so knowing that really helps you protect your attendees and yourself from somebody who would come in the meeting and not behave appropriately. So that's the participants. The feedback is such a great way to get some quick interactions and just generate some energy, because you can, like, oh my gosh, looks like it's neck and neck, or oh, the no's are ahead, and and it's fun to watch the numbers tally, and the numbers tally for you as the facilitator, so you don't have to count. So it's all good. All right, well, let's look at chat. So chat right now, I love chat because that can be where we can have individual conversations, we can have whole group chat. It's a really great way to ask for feedback. And like in this meeting right now, Stephanie's been participating with me and sending to the panelists, she's been sending some questions. And so we've, or she's been sending some chat about her thoughts on how things are working. And so definitely you have the chat can really be a great way to facilitate discussion, and it can also be a way for participants to have that back and forth. And like, I just facilitated some webinars, and people would share, which was awesome, because it's hard. It's hard in a group of 100 people to say, hey, unmute yourself and tell us about what you did. And they did. And then the rest of the group would be like, way to go. And so it was pretty fun in the chat. So you kind of felt that positive vibe, and that like it was a face-to-face setting. So just so you know, you can control what people can do in chat. And so if I wanted to disable somebody's chat, I could say they could not chat, they could only chat with me, etc., etc. Great question, Cindy, and I'll get to you in a little bit then, okay? All right, so shared docs facilitate, and we're gonna look at those in a second, but breakout rooms is what really, they're so fun. So breakout rooms. When you are a host, you have the power to do a breakout room. When you are not the host, you don't see it. And so like when you're in a meeting, you don't have any idea that this is even an option. And this is why it's really important, if you are wanting to do a breakout room, that you go into your settings and you enable that option before you start your meeting. So when you are on your menu at the bottom of the page, you see that you have how you have the breakout room option. And so when you click on create rooms, it will, and I had nobody in this meeting when I was doing it, but the cool thing here is you notice you can automatically assign people or manually assign people. And so if I had 10 people in this room and I made 5 breakout rooms, it would tell me down here that I have 2 participants per room. When I click on create rooms, then it shows me this window, this larger window here. And one of the things I want to point out is this options tab. And you guys, I just learned this. So you guys maybe already know it, but I just learned it. And so when you can click on options and notice there's a move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. Magic, you guys. So what I've always participated in is you get sent to a breakout room, and then there's a little box that pops up on your screen that says you've been invited to a breakout room, and then you have to click join. And you can imagine how hard it is to get people to click join. And so you end up with people in the room and they're like, I can't see the join, I don't know, it's horrible. So this move them all automatically, they just go whoosh. And so it's awesome. So definitely check out your options and move people automatically. You can enable or disable if they can come back to the main room at any time. So sometimes I think about it's like sending the children off to their rooms and you don't want them to come back, but that's either way. You can set when they close automatically. And so if you aren't very good at keeping track of time, you could say, I'm going to send you into a breakout room for 15 minutes, set this so it closes at 15 minutes, and then at 15 minutes, they will just come back. And then when you have the ability to close the breakout room, when you do close the breakout room, you can set the countdown timer for, it's typically a minute is default. I reduced it to 10 seconds just because we didn't have a lot of time for discussion, and so I didn't really want that. So that's kind of the nuts and the bolts of a breakout room. But one of the main things with a breakout room when you're thinking about it is the protocol and the directions for using the breakout room. And so we just held our online Thai conference this week, and we had 2,500, and we had a few breakout sessions, and we shot them all into breakout rooms, and it was fine. Mostly. It was actually really good. But having a protocol and helping people understand that is really important. And so one of the things that you want to think about is, we said when you're going to be sent to a breakout room after introducing the topic, here's what you should do in a breakout room. You can open the shared discussion slides. And so we had shared discussion slides, which were awesome because as a facilitator, I can scroll through the slides and see, ooh, room 2 isn't doing anything. Maybe I should join them and see what's up. Or, oh, wow, look, room 3 is having a really good discussion. I'm going to make sure we call on them or, invite them to talk first. Or, it gives you as a facilitator a lot of tools. So open the shared slides, unmute yourself, use the camera because you're going to be in a smaller group. And so it's okay to be unmuted and also to use your camera. Somebody has to take the lead. If you don't, obviously the discussion just won't happen. And so generally, just somebody take the lead, somebody take notes on the shared doc. And then, we explained that each room has a document to record notes. Find your breakout room number and then collaborate. For sharing out afterwards, it's much easier if you ask people to put their participants' names on the slides and then to highlight the name of the person that would like to share so that you as a host, when you're done and you say, okay, would breakout room 3 like to share? You end up with breakout room 3 knows that, Dale's going to share because they highlighted his name. And so you have that already. It's not that quiet, while all 4 people in breakout room 3 are thinking about who's going to unmute. And so it really keeps it moving along a lot more quickly. So the breakout room protocol, and I really encourage you guys, if you want to do a breakout room, is to practice. And you can practice with yourself and your iPad and your smartphone and another computer, or you can invite a friend, but just practice going in and out of breakout rooms, joining them, leaving them, just to kind of see what it's like, because it really isn't a big deal. But the first time you do it, it's kind of, it's just the first time you do anything. So that's breakout rooms, which for me, I love them. And I know Stephanie noted how much she likes them too, just because they really do a nice job of facilitating discussion. So let's keep on rolling on to a couple other options. So here's a breakout room shared discussion slide. And as you can see, it's pretty simple. You really don't need to have anything super elaborate. In this example, we were discussing projects that we had done. And so it was just something that we needed their name, we needed to know what project they did, and then some summary notes of what happened. And so it wasn't that, you can put the question that you're discussing, you can do all that. And the great thing is then when the discussion is over, everybody in the meeting can go back and look at the individual slides and say, oh, that's a great idea, or you can get even more info. So lots of really good stuff. The whiteboard. So when you're sharing, you do have an option for a whiteboard. And something that I didn't bring up, and if you've done a Zoom meeting and you've shared your screen, you know this. So when you're in a Zoom meeting to begin with, your controls are at the bottom of the screen and you know where they're at. And then you go and share your screen and your controls disappear. Actually, they just go to the top of the screen and you can see them behind that little ID and stop share. And so if you mouse over that, you do see your controls. And so when we look at our controls, one of the things that you can do is you can share a whiteboard. And then when you're on the you can click on the whiteboard to get your controls. A couple of things as a participant, as a facilitator, you can disable your participants' annotations. And so, like, say this is where your students are starting to, scribble and, really be disrespectful. You can disable that. You can also show the names of people who are annotating in the meeting, so you have options there. couple of other things that you can do in this is you also, like if I wanted to share a video right now, I can share my computer sound. And so if I forgot to share that when I was sharing, I can do that too. So you have that option also. So Dina asked a great question about what's an example of a reason why you would use breakout rooms. So breakout rooms, anytime you want to have a smaller group discussion. And so I've used breakout rooms to share projects, and so to have everybody share a project. I did a breakout room with a group where we were looking at primary sources, and each group in the face-to-face world, each group had a picture and they analyzed it. In our online world, I wanted to be able to replicate that, and so I created a shared slides with the picture on one slide and the questions that they would have answered on paper or verbally on another slide, and then they went through and they analyzed their image, and then we came back and we showed, I showed the image to the group, and whoever was sharing in that group described what they noticed and what they saw, and then we went back and did a few more things with that. And so we facilitated an entire process basically using breakout rooms. So anytime that you would tell people to turn and talk to each other is a perfect time for a breakout room. You just any time where you want people to be able to talk easily, because when you have a lot of people in a webinar, it's really easy to talk over each other. All right, so whiteboard is great if you want to do annotations on the screen or be able to, like draw out equations or type or, anything like that. So the whiteboard is a really great option to have. Let's see, what's my last one? I have one more. Oh, maybe whiteboard was my last one. I think it is. It is. So whiteboard is my last one that we're going to look at for, the interactivity. So I'm going to pop back over to the slideshow. And the last thing I wanted to touch base with you guys was, scheduling and communicating. As you are scheduling meetings, one of the things that you need to know about are you need to think about how you're scheduling your meetings, in the sense of what you're scheduling them for. And so I'm going to pop off my slides, and I'm going to, let's see. I want to show you my Zoom again so that you can go in and kind of see what that looks like when you schedule a meeting. So when we schedule a meeting, and I want to schedule a new meeting, and I can do this in my Zoom app, or I can do it in my browser. And so you've got the topic. I really encourage you to name them as clearly as possible, just because when you send them out, they tend to be a meeting that's like, if it says my meeting, I have no idea really what it is. And when I go back and look at it, I have no idea what it is. When your description, same way. Time, duration. One of the nice things with Zoom is it does not, like if I set my meeting for an hour and we go for an hour and a half, it's not going to stop at the end of that hour. So that's really nice. If you do have a free account, you are limited to, I believe, 45 minutes with multiple people. But if you don't have, if you're just one-to-one, you can talk all day. This recurring meeting really can make your life a lot easier. And so this would be one of those things that if you were setting up a weekly meeting with your team, you could just say, here's the link for the weekly meeting. You could do a recurring meeting on your calendar. You do not have to go in and recreate meetings every week. So it gives you a lot more flexibility there. You also have the ability here to do some settings, so we can check off the mute participants on entry or enable waiting room, and that kind of thing. When we save our meeting, and I'll just save it here. Then it's going to give me the option to, I can add it to my calendar. I can copy the invitation if I want. And so here I can copy it and paste it into an invite or onto an agenda or whatever. And so that is a really easy way to do that. So just one of the things to think about as you are scheduling meetings and doing things is how you would want to do that. All right. So, and then the last thing is really thinking about how you're going to share your information in the meeting, because it's a lot harder in a meeting online, because we can't, it's like, oh, here's a handout, it's a lot harder. You have to have your resources organized. And so having a document with the links for the day, or having shared that out ahead of time so people know what they're looking at, can really make a big difference. So those are kind of the big points that I wanted to touch on today, was just the settings to help keep you safe and your participants, and also to allow as much interactivity as possible. Some things to think about as you are setting up your meetings, and then the ways that we can interact with our participants really easily. And finally, that last, scheduling and communicating on how to do that effectively. So I've got lots of questions, and so we're going to pop into the questions real quick, and I will work on answering them. So let's see. So Desmond asked about, can private chat between two participants be seen by the host? I can't answer that question. And so I will pop it in the Wakelet when I'm done, so you can pop back and see. I know from recording the chats this week and kind of looking at them, I don't think I saw private chats between participants, but I did see private chats between the participants and me. And so if you private chatted me, I saw that in my recording. And so I will double check, and I'll add that to the Wakelet. I'll show you where. Dale asked, is the breakout room only available on webinars? No, the breakout room is available on Zoom meetings. And so you can do those on the Zoom meetings, that a typical meeting. The webinar is a paid function, and so like we're in a webinar today, which means that like you can't see each other. You could only see the panelists, etc. So. And then someone finally told you where to find the controls at the top of the whiteboard. Yes, that's one of the things that I have to do is try to find that. So when somebody shares a whiteboard, the controls to be able to annotate or draw are at the top. And so if you can write on your screen with a stylus, you can write on this whiteboard with a stylus too. It just depends on what you can do on your screen with a stylus. And then Dina shares out in the chat that you have to collect demographics. And so when you're scheduling a webinar, it allows a registration because it's automatic. You don't have the same option. Actually, so Dina, I have a question for you on that, because let's pop back over to my chat, or mine. Yes, I can do that. So let's pop back over to my settings. And so with the paid account, I can actually set a meeting up that has the registration option. And so I can do registration. And then once I have the registration and I go down and I click on save, and I just have a regular, like a basic paid account. I don't have a massive paid account. Then if I scroll down to the bottom, I have all these settings. And so there's the email setting, there's the registration setting that I have. And within that, I can edit these options, and I can actually add in custom questions. And so I can add in new questions. So that would be where I could add in that demographic or race or anything like that in a Zoom meeting setting, if that makes sense, because this is a Zoom meeting that I'm modeling for you guys right now. And so yes, you can add in all the questions that you want. Default, it just comes up with, I believe, these are the default. I mean, like it comes up, it does your first name and email address are required. I've added the last name, and that was all that I added for mine. But yeah, it does. And the other nice thing, Dina, is your participants get access to the meeting information right away, whereas if you do Google, they may not get access to the webinar login until, and you can put it on your calendar and everything. Though you can turn off that option if you don't want to share the email out. If you don't want to send a confirmation email to participants, you can turn that off. So cool. So, and there are enough settings in Zoom that trust me, there are multiple layers. And so if you are not the owner of the account or the admin of the account, there are multiple layers. And so I would definitely ask, because you can do it in a meeting. And that's, I'd never dabbled in webinars until last week. So now I'm dangerous. So okay. So Desmond asks about, can you share how to send an invitation that would be directly connected to your calendar? Yep, we can do that. So when I'm in a meeting here, I can add it to my Outlook calendar if I wanted to, and it'll pop up. So this one it downloaded and show in folder. I can also use the Zoom app. And if I wanted to schedule a meeting here, at that point, what I can do is when I've scheduled it, I can pick like Outlook and it will spin for a minute and then it'll open up the Outlook meeting. So you have that option. I've got a great question from Brenda about, can you record meetings in a free account, and is it better to save to the cloud or the computer? So you can record meetings in all the accounts, but you have to, one of the things is on your free account, you don't have any cloud space. And so you have to record them to your computer. Really, if you have space on your computer, recording them to your computer is fine. Recording them to the cloud gives you that functionality to be able to share them immediately, or not immediately, but really quickly without having to upload them somewhere. So it really just depends. But on the free account, you can only record to your computer. So any other questions? I think I've answered. Ooh, oh, I love this question, Tanya. What's the difference between a Zoom meeting and a Zoom webinar? In a Zoom webinar, I have so much more power. So in a Zoom webinar, you have, you as a participant are hidden. And I will add this page, this Zoom page, to the Wakelet too, just so you guys can see it. But basically, when you're in, a meeting is really way more interactive. And so if you're going to do the breakout rooms, if you're going to do you want to be able to do the feedback, you want to do those kinds of things, a meeting is the way to go. If you're going to really just do a lecture and you want to do a presentation, a webinar is the way to go, because you can ask questions and you can chat, but that's really about it. So what is it best for? You know, here they say the webinars are best for like educational lectures, quarterly updates. If you've attended any of the school board meetings lately online, they are using Zoom webinars. And so that's why you'll only see the panelists. That's why we only see in the pictures, we only see the board members, but those of us that are online, we don't see. I also have the ability to control in a webinar who can see the participants, and so I can hide the participants a lot easier. And so the cost is free for a webinar or a meeting, I'm sorry. You can do a meeting for free. So you can sign up for a free Zoom account and go to town and have your 40-minute meeting and you're good. It's also paid. you know, pay for the account and get some additional features. One of the things that the webinar, it's a paid add-on, and so you have to have a paid account to be able to do a webinar. And but it's an easy, quick add-on. We decided we were going to do a webinar last week, I think on Thursday night, and it was there as soon as we gave them the credit card. So super easy. So any other questions? So if you have a meeting that you've recorded and it was not recorded to the cloud, is there any way to share it? Actually, yes. One of the easiest ways to do that is to just upload it either to YouTube or Google Drive or OneDrive or any of the cloud storage or Dropbox, you know, any of those places. You can upload it there and share a link out. So you have options there. All right. So any other questions as we kind of wrap up our session? So I think I've answered all the questions, and so unless there's more questions, I will wrap it up. I will quick show you where I'm going to drop the answers to like Desmond's question and stuff like that, just because I want to make sure you have that. So I'll show you that. And so I've put together just a number of resources here. So the kind of the just 101 with the things to think about. Here are all the settings. And so that we talked about, you know, just kind of to make sure you have those options. Dr. Matheson's professional webinar etiquette, these video backgrounds, the fun video backgrounds. And then also, this is where I'll answer that question about being able to see private chat. So unless there are any other questions, we will call it a day. So thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check Elevate Rapid City's Facebook page for upcoming webinars. And you can also find our previous webinars on the Elevate Rapid City YouTube channel. Stay healthy and safe.